Hello, I'm Ritula Shah, standing in for Catty Kay, who can't be with us this week.
And I'm Carlos Watson in California.
Welcome to When Catty Met Carlos,
a new podcast exploring what's shaping America today, brought to you by the BBC World Service and OZY Media. Ritula, thank you so much for joining me today and stepping in for Catty.
Carlos, I'm really pleased to be here. I've got something I'm dying to ask you. I know this is a podcast, but have you got your cat filter on?
My cat filter? I am totally embarrassed.
Have you seen the video? Have you seen the video of the lawyer who had the cat filter on?
I have not. Am I to be completely embarrassed and outdone here?
If you haven't seen it, you've got to go and see the clip of the Texas lawyer who's appearing via Zoom or some kind of technology. And actually what he has on is his cat filter. You can't see the lawyer. You can see a terrified looking cat. It is hilarious.
You know what? I am not ready to be a cat filter, and I don't have my cat filter on as we speak. But I probably do need some filter of some sort.
I think this, though, has been the year of the tech fail, hasn't it? We've all understood how easy it is to be absolutely blindsided by technology, and the pandemic has made us very, very dependent on it. And the older you are, I suspect, the easier it is to be blindsided by technology.
I 100% agree with you. It's been interesting to see our comfort with technology. I think some of us, frankly, are wearing out a little bit of all of the Zooms and the Netflix binges and the rest. And so will we go into a little bit of technology hibernation? Who knows?
You should see me in a crowd. I'm gonna run, there's nothing to help. Watch me make them bow one by one.
On today's show, we're looking at how Gen Z are changing the world. They're the generation born from 1996 to the present day, so that's anyone under the age of 25.
They may be young, but they have numbers. 24 million of them were eligible to vote in the US presidential election. In fact, November saw the highest turnout in history for that age group. Deja Fox may have played some part in that, as she was working on Kamala Harris's campaign. At 19, she was the youngest staffer, and she worked on the social media strategy. Deja, what was your proudest moment working for Kamala Harris?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My proudest moment was having the independence and the agency to start a campaign called This Is What a President Looks Like. It was something that lived on social media under a hashtag, but also in real life. We had stickers on mirrors and T-shirts. And at the core of the campaign, it was about what it felt like to finally see yourself represented in a candidate like Kamala Harris, which really hit home for me as someone who was raised by a single mom, who is a first-generation American, who is a woman of color, to look to a candidate like Kamala Harris and see my experience and myself represented, and to truly know that she is what a president looks like, and I, too, can aspire to that. And so that was probably my proudest moment, was seeing young brown and black girls in those T-shirts and mirrors owning that power.
Our second guest today is Maya Penn, who started selling clothes at age 8 and is now the CEO of her own sustainable clothing brand, Maya's Ideas. She's the author of You Got This, a handbook for other would-be teenage CEOs, and also has her own animation studio. Most importantly, today is her birthday. Happy birthday, Maya. Maya, how old are you today, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, thank you. I'm 21 today, so that's cool.
Fantastic. Happy birthday. So talk to me about what made you feel confident in starting a company so young.
So I really started Maya's Ideas from a passion for both the environment and sustainability. A lot of my work has always centered around environmental activism. The fashion industry in particular has a lot of adverse impact on the environment. In fact, more carbon emissions are produced from the fashion industry than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. At the time, sustainable fashion wasn't really on anyone's radar like it is now. And so, even at 8 years old, that's really what drove me to start my business. I wanted to do something that was mission driven and that made a difference in the world in some way. And I think that's really resonated with people.
Deja, if I can bring you in, is it about technology in a sense, that has enabled you to collaborate and to go on these extraordinary adventures at a relatively young age.
Yeah, Gen Z has had social media since we were kids. We've had iPhones in our hands since we were in elementary school. And so in that sense, we have never lost touch with anyone. We've had our best friend from first grade on Instagram and available to us at every moment for forever. And we've always been able to send a message and in an instant connect with someone around the world. Similarly, we've always had Google in our pocket. And I think that is why our generation is so empowered, whether in an entrepreneurial sense, right? To Google, how do I start my own nonprofit? How do I build a business? And there's so many things and so many resources at our fingertips. And with social media, the storytelling landscape has become so democratized. Anyone can tell their story. And Gen Zers have grown up in a place where this is true, where they can tell their story to millions of people online, but they can also consume stories of people and introduce themselves to people that they may otherwise have never met. And so I think in that sense, the exposure to information, but also to each other, has really shaped our generation to become one that is go-getters. We go out and we make things happen, but we do it together.
Deja, I want to go deeper on something that you mentioned there, which is feeling empowered. I had an interesting conversation with the musician Phineas, whose sister is Billie Eilish, a Gen Z member as well. And he was saying, Carlos, I think one of the most significant things about Gen Z is that we've never had to ask permission, or at least we don't ask permission as much as others. We simply upload our videos or we launch this tweet or this post. A, do you think that's right, that there's a level of let's just go? And B, is that a good thing?
I am someone who has gone viral on multiple occasions. The first time when I was 16 years old for an exchange with my senator about birth control access. And though it was overwhelming at the time for millions of people to have access to me and my story, it was life-changing in the sense that I saw the power in my story to create change. I went on to lobby on Capitol Hill. I went on to be live on CNN. And this was all from a girl who was still in high school, working at a gas station, experiencing homelessness. And I think that in that sense, people who have never had the space to tell their stories on a large scale do because of social media. And in that sense, this digital revolution is the first that marginalized people will really get the chance to benefit from and participate in a meaningful way.
I do think your can-do attitude is extraordinary. It really is jaw-dropping. Maya, you've been talking about the fact that you have been part of this digital revolution, but you also taught yourself to code. You don't seem to see barriers, you just see opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I would actually, kind of agree to what they just said around how, marginalized people, especially now, there's a new, it's almost a more even playing field in a sense to be able to build your platform in a really meaningful and kind of authentic way using the internet. As you mentioned, I taught myself to code and I built my own website when I was 10 years old just by teaching myself HTML through just doing this research online. And, I can relate to Deja speaking about going viral. When I did my TED Talk in 2013, it went viral worldwide. And, from there, a lot of unique opportunities unfolded for me. But it does really, like I said, kind of level the playing field and let a lot of people whose voices traditionally would not be heard have that platform to be able to speak out and to share whatever their authentic perspective is.
A defining feature of Gen Z is that they grew up during the tough economic times of the recession. Jason Dorsey's the founder of the Centre for Generational Kinetics and surveys people from different generations. He says this is a really important factor in shaping Gen Z.
What our research has shown consistently is that the Great Recession has significantly impacted how Gen Z views money, savings, retirement. We found that 69% of Gen Z say saving for retirement should be a priority. This is highly unusual given their age. When you look back at other generations, if they had extra money saved up, they were going to spend it. They weren't saying, well, we need to save it for a rainy day or something that could happen. So this is one of the trends that we believe is going to continue to affect how they think about retirement, savings, and what they want from employers. What our research shows is that parenting is the greatest influence of each generation. And when we look at Gen Z, their parents are primarily Gen X. And what happened with the Great Recession is that Gen X in particular was at a place in their career where it really hit them. And in combination, what you see is a shift in parenting style where Gen X in particular, we see are really trying to raise their kids to be more self-reliant, more resilient, particularly when it comes to money. So you put all that together and you can see how the Great Recession has had a huge impact on Gen Z.
Maya, does that resonate with you as you hear Jason talking about the recession and the potential impact on you and your peers in terms of how you think about money and saving and the rest?
It does resonate. Financial literacy at a young age is something that I gained both through my parents, but also through running my own business. I was putting all of my profits, except for 10%, which are going to charities, right back into my business. And so I had to be very strategic about how to kind of grow in scale. So all of those things kind of definitely have shaped how I view money, the importance of saving. Absolutely.
Deja, I want to bring you in on this conversation about money and Gen Z. What, if anything, is distinctive about the way Gen Z is approaching money in your experience?
From a personal perspective, I'm someone who grew up in Section 8 housing and on food stamps, right? I grew up below that poverty line with a single mom during this 2008 recession, and it hit me and my family hard, as it did most of the people that were at the very bottom, right? These are the people who were the most affected and who continue to be. And so as we think about how this recession affected us as children, I think a larger part of the conversation also has to be how this pandemic is affecting us as a generation that is now headed into the workforce, right? At a moment of great uncertainty. And so while I think saving is absolutely an important indicator and possible difference between Gen Z and other generations, again, I think there's so much still to be decided in terms of how Gen Z views finances.
I just wonder, Maya, are the kind of attitudes that Gen Z has, can you change companies when it comes to social issues? Is the corporate world going to welcome these ideas and the changes that you may want to bring about?
I would say absolutely. Well, first of all, you have to really take a look at the numbers and how Gen Z is deeply affecting a number of industries. It's estimated that Gen Z annual purchasing power is around as high as $323 billion in the U.S. And researchers are also forecasting that this can grow by more than 4 times when accounting for Gen Z's influence over, the entire household. And then on top of that, you have a generation that is very socially and environmentally aware, very educated on social and environmental issues and how a number of industries impact these issues. 40% of Gen Z in a survey conducted by Green Match said that they have boycotted brands because those brands did not align with their values, whether it be around diversity and inclusion, sustainability, ethical treatment of workers, whatever the issue is or whatever the topic is. Gen Z is very much sticking by that. We're speaking with our dollars, we're voting with our dollars. And as someone who has directly consulted Fortune 500 brands who are having to really rush and keep up to meet this demand from Gen Z, there is definitely a shift happening. These brands are listening, they're watching, and they're really trying to figure out how they can, like I said, keep up and really gain a trust with a lot of Gen Z consumers who are really educated about these issues and how industries affect them.
The main place Gen Z may end up changing your world is the workplace. It's where the generations collide, and of course this can cause problems. Here's Jason Dorsey again.
In 2020, the number one social cause that mattered to Gen Z was social justice. But in particular, what we found is that Gen Z really wanted companies to take more action on racial equality and ending poverty and homelessness. And is now what we see incredibly important for employers to recruit and retain the generation and really think about having a public stand on it. One area in particular is that Gen Z appears to be much more comfortable talking about gender identity and sexuality and being able to talk about it and express who they are in the workplace. And what I've certainly heard from other generations, and at least very specifically certain employers and executives, is that something that they're uncomfortable with and they don't know how to deal with it. For 10, 20, 30, 40 years, some of them maybe felt like they were trained even not to talk about. You don't ask about those things. They will tell you that it absolutely does not belong in the workplace. And that's going to continue to be a challenge. And employers are going to have to decide how they want to handle this.
Deja, I wonder what you think about that. You've put sexual health very much on the map. You've demanded people give it attention. But do you understand that older generations maybe find some of this really quite difficult and uncomfortable?
I do. But I also understand that it is my job to make people uncomfortable, to continue to push the needle. And it is their job and their responsibility to listen. Because it is me and Maya and Gen Z who are going to inherit the world, right? Inherit the problems that, in fact, these other generations have created, whether that's climate change, the rise of hate. There are so many issues that if we do not act on quickly, that our generation may never be able to make substantial change on. And so it's not a question of making people feel comfortable, but rather a question of decisive action now, because it has to be that way. And I think that is in so many reasons why Gen Z is not just the leaders of the future, we're the leaders of today, is because we don't have time to waste. We are inheriting problems that are much bigger than us and require immediate action.
Deja, I think that's so powerful and interesting to hear. I've been saying to many people that I think the 2020s will be the new 60s, that I think that there will be the kinds of significant game-changing debates and discussions about everything from love to war, from capitalism to work, from race to gender. And hearing you lay that out as you did, I think affirms that. What kind of reception are you, though, getting back from your parents and your parents' generation as you were engaging in these uncomfortable conversations?
This is intergenerational work. The same way that we are inheriting the problems created from whether my parents' generations or older, we are also inheriting their successes, right? We are inheriting their wins. And in that way, social justice work is like a relay race. My mom handing the baton off to me and me off to the women I work with. And so in that sense, we have to recognize about these intergenerational partnerships and what we have to learn from each other. So I will say that there's so much to learn from the elders in this movement, the people who have been doing this work, who were active, in fact, in the 60s, who are still around to inform the work that we do today. But those people are also those who are holding more power, whether that be in the workforce or politically. And so it is their job to also listen and learn from the wisdom that young people have, right? The insight and the lived experiences that we bring to the table and the perspective that we have as the people who are realistically going to inherit the work that we do.
But I'm going to throw in a slightly sour note here. Maya, what about those who would say both you and Deja have a very particular worldview? And while you want to be inclusive, is the opinion that you want of a very particular strand? Are you less open to views that don't coincide with your own, which is something that some people might find difficult?
It's really important to, recognize that when it comes to, kind of different views, there are kind of different levels to what you're speaking to. Sometimes there is simply a lack of awareness or a lack of education around a certain topic. I think that there's a lack of empathy in some cases, because you can even, for example, look to talking about racial injustice. Being a Black woman, this is something I've always spoken to, even in my work within sustainability. Environmental racism is a very real issue. It's across the U.S. And across the globe, where Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities are more adversely affected by environmental issues like climate change, like pollution. As I kind of spoke to some of those topics, starting out, a lot of people just didn't see the relevance. A lot of people just did not see how this related to the overall, goal to working to a more sustainable future, because there was that kind of lack of empathy and lack of understanding in that way. And so, I think that, in terms of, if I'm not open to people who don't agree with me, I have to remember, first of all, is this a matter of people needing to just understand more around this topic and just need to be more aware? Or is this a matter of almost of survival, at the same time? Because we're at a pretty dire place in a lot of social and environmental crises. And so sometimes it is a matter of having to kind of continue to push forward because of the fact that those people are not really contributing to help make a difference in a kind of final countdown, sort of a lot of these issues.
But Deja, if I can put it in a slightly different way, people can agree on the problem, but they may disagree on the solution. So in the case of a company, if it takes a political stance on something where there isn't necessarily an agreement on how to solve a particular problem, doesn't that put some employees off who don't agree with their stance?
I think the corporate example is an interesting one, because companies will always hold more power than an individual employee. And so it is a power imbalance. But I think ultimately, Maya said this earlier, that people vote with their dollars, and companies taking political stands realize they have to, because that is what our generation, Gen Z, is demanding of them. But also what is going to find them success financially, right? I'm not sure I can point to a specific example of what you mean with this disagreement between employer and employee. But
religion, sexuality, those are the kind of things that people disagree about, aren't they?
I think Maya said this beautifully, that there are levels to disagreement, and that I personally don't consider it to just be a political disagreement when someone denies someone else's humanity based on their identity. And that is not something I entertain, and nor that I consider to just be something up for debate.
Deja Fox, Maya Penn, what an absolute pleasure to have both of you. Thank you very, very much. I really hope that you guys will join us again in the future, and I'm excited about what comes next in this world of ours.
And Maya, have a great birthday.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
Thank you both.
So Deja and Maya are the same age as my children. There's a confession, a similar age to my children. And I think what defines that generation is that they have such a can-do attitude, which you saw in spades in that conversation. Nothing gets in the way. There's a fearlessness that I certainly didn't have at their age. And I really love that. I love the fact that they don't see problems. They see solutions, and there's no sense of deference to an older generation. It's like, this is what we want to do. If we don't know, we're going to find out, because we can Google it, and suddenly the way has been opened. If I don't know how to code, I'll teach myself. That is amazing.
Well, it was also interesting to hear Deja talk about what Dr. King used to famously call the fierce urgency of now. And his encouragement in the 60s to, the Gen Zers of that era to take up challenges now, do things that might be uncomfortable for parents and grandparents, because the weight of these things was so heavy. And so hearing her say, we've got to act now and we can't afford to be slow moving. That also is intriguing to hear that sense of urgency. And she called it at another point, the Amazon generation. We want it now.
It is interesting, isn't it? They managed to combine individualism with a sense of a wider society. What will be interesting to see is when these ideas, these kind of young people who have a very idealistic vision of the world, when they come up against, if you like, let's call them political obstacles, people with different views, how is that going to shake down? Are they going to be willing to accommodate? Are they going to tone down some of those ideas? Will there be some sort of compromise, or will this very strong, very clear idealism triumph for them?
Yeah, it will be. There will be a lot to watch. It feels like there will be many different participants in the public conversation in the years to come. Gen Z, to some extent, millennials in a meaningful way. Gen X, still some boomers. So I'm intrigued to see what that will mean on some of the big issues of the day. For those of you listening, I'd love to hear what you think the biggest impact of Gen Z will be in the decade ahead. Will it be on love? Will it be on capitalism? Will it be on the workplace? Will it be on race? Will it be on other issues? Go on social and tell us what you think. Use the hashtag When Caddy Met Carlos and let us know. I'm completely intrigued to hear what you think. In the 2020s, which I call the new 60s, what will be the biggest impact of Gen Z?
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of When Catty Met Carlos, a co-production from the BBC World Service
and OZY Media. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review, tell a friend, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. We'll be back soon.